Martial will be the best player in the world. Martial will be the best in the world.
Can't lie, this one hurts a little. Let's cut to the chase. Things aren't looking good for Anthony Martial at the moment. Hailing from the same Parisian area as the great Thierry Henry and playing in similar positions, the comparisons between the two were rife early on. Sounds good, right? Well, for many reasons, the unraveling of Anthony Martial's career has gone from promising and perspective to just plain poor, and predictably poor in the eyes of some. Laziness, injuries, and what's being described as a poor attitude have unfortunately led to where we're at today. It pains me to say this, but Martial is running out of time to save his career at the top level. But why is that? More specifically, what's happening to Anthony Martial? Yo, what's going on everyone? Hope you're all doing well. I'm Tinashe, welcome back to another video. I'm traveling at the moment, so background's a little bit different, but we move. Now that that's out the way, let's go ahead and jump straight into this one. Born in Paris in 1995, Anthony Martial's future occupation was seemingly decided upon before most kids entered grade school. Quick, strong, and flashy, he was obviously bumped up in age groups pretty frequently. He was so good that teams across Europe were looking to draft him into their academies quite early on, and in 2007, Manchester City were one of those teams. They scouted him at just 12 years of age and flew him over for a visit. As history shows, him and his family turned them down. However, apparently his trainers at Les Ulis, his youth team at the time, were unsure as to the reasons why. In reality, this is probably just because he was young and they didn't want to disrupt his development. But there is an alternative reason. Now, the low-hanging fruit here would be to make a joke about how Man City only became a club in 2008 after the takeover. However, I'm above that. But it's true. When 2009 came along, Lyon drafted him into their academy, and only 4 years later, almost directly after he turned pro, Monaco was up. He'd been a hot prospect throughout his entire life by then, and this stint only provided further proof of that notion. And the Monaco side Martial was a starter for was actually quite remarkable looking back. Bernardo Silva, Fabinho, Yannick Carrasco, and when he left, they replaced him with PSG's current sporting director. A truly gifted group of players. The 14-15 season was his breakout year for Monaco. A 12-goal return with 5 assists made him one of the most sought-after youngsters in the world at the time. All of this prompted some unprecedented behavior in the transfer market. Transfers for teenagers have always been a point of contention, especially when they go for excessively high sums. Is an inexperienced player really worth that much? Is a question that a lot of people frequently ask. However, Manchester United never seemed too interested in this question, seeing as they broke the record for teenage transfers twice in consecutive seasons. 2014, Luke Shaw. 2015, Anthony Martial. Both deals had flat fees with the ability to rise based on certain clauses being met, but that Anthony Martial deal had something a little bit special in it. Good old Ed Woodward pulled a worldie on this one, I must admit. £36 million upfront and 3 clauses which would only activate if the following deliverables were achieved. Score 25 goals over the next 4 years, an extra 7.2 million. Make 25 appearances for the French national team over the next 4 years, an extra 7.2 million. Both realistic clauses, if we're all being honest, but the third clause is where all the headlines were at. The infamous Ballon d'Or clause. 1 Golden Ball win over the next 4 years, 7.2 million. Genius. Listen, regardless of how he's been performing recently, you can't deny that he was a really promising talent back then, but not that promising. However, that would only be revealed over the course of time. Initially, the guy made a lot of people genuinely believe that hitting all of those clauses was a very real possibility. And seeing as he was the 2015 Golden Boy winner, who was to say he couldn't reach crazy heights somewhere down the line? Especially after scoring a quite outrageous solo goal against Liverpool of all teams in his Premier League debut. If anyone wants to tell me Martin Tyler isn't a Man United fan, I don't want to hear it. This is just unprofessional. 2 more goals against Southampton the following week got United fans more excited about a young player than they had been in a while. He was, of course, still only 19. Spinning the Saints version of Virgil van Dijk here is one for the highlight reels. The rest of this first season must have felt like a dream for the guy. Good performances from him culminated in 17 goals and 9 assists, and good performances from the team secured a dramatic FA Cup win. A fantastic first season, but the next 3 years were less than ideal. to say the least. Aside from the odd hot streak, a fall from grace saw his form plummet as attacker after attacker came in, displaced him, and made him look like a shell of the Man United bought. Zlatan came in and took his 9, Lukaku laid claim to it after that, Alexis Sanchez came in and displaced him on the left, and for the most part, Marcus Rashford was ahead of him in the pecking order. Rumours of him scrapping this whole Manchester adventure were pretty rife at this point. It wasn't a great time. And just in case you were wondering, at this point of the story, we're in 2019. Only one of his 3 clauses from his initial transfer actually came to fruition. But the 1920 season was a whole different story. He got his 9 back, and it's almost like the man heard the press talking smack and had some choice words to deliver. He was scoring goals from the jump, but a pretty lackluster first half of the season didn't do United many favors. However, a post-lockdown Man United, that was different gravy. And again, Martial was one of the key factors that made that possible. 23 goals in all competitions after a return to the centre-forward role, and maybe, just maybe, this was a sign that the guy was going to push on and become as great as we all knew he should have been all along. Spoiler. This was not the case. Ever since then, the guy just seems to be destitute. He spent the last 2 seasons either on the bench, injured, or suspended and on trial for attempted murder. Eric Lamela will be remembered. RIP. Since he was a kid, many have made the claim that Martial has always been a quiet, reserved guy, which is normal. The guy probably just didn't have much to say and wanted his feet to do the talking. That was the explanation that we got early on, and it worked pretty well when he was performing. Now, that same demeanor, in the press at least, is interpreted as cold, distant, uninterested. Whenever he's on the pitch, the guy just doesn't really seem like he wants to be there. It was hoped that a short loan spell at Sevilla would help revitalize his career, but this just did not end up being the case, unfortunately. I watched a couple of his matches in the past La Liga season and read almost all of the match reports to check up on how he was doing, but I was disappointed almost every time I engaged, which is probably a little bit harsh seeing as injuries made it so he only got to play about 9 matches, but at the same time, a singular goal in 9 appearances as a centre forward is, mind my French, piss poor. I'm going to use the word fiasco and another, deception. That's how I would describe Martial in Sevilla. He scored 1 goal. He didn't appear committed in Manchester and he was cold on the pitch here. He didn't convince and Sevilla didn't even think about trying to negotiate with Manchester to sign him permanently. He didn't take the responsibility of the Sevilla shirt. He gave it back. Manolo Martin, a big Sevilla fan and well-known journalist in the city, said this to The Athletic. So what's the problem? Well, I guess there are a few. Let's start with his position. In a few interviews over the years, he stated that his preferred position is in the center. Seeing as he's had his best years there, I'd be surprised if that weren't still the case. Only problem is that almost every manager that's come in hasn't felt the same way. Despite playing him in the middle quite a bit and believing he would one day become a true number 9, Van Gaal saw him as a winger. Both Oli and Mourinho played him in the center for periods before eventually pulling the plug when it wasn't working out for him. To be fair, Mourinho didn't seem to rate him at all. Adding on to that, in his Manchester United career, he has played roughly 126 games positioned in the centre, 124 games on the left, and the remaining 17 odd games in miscellaneous spots depending on the game requirements. So he's had his chances and he's even seen success in bursts, but the consistency just doesn't seem to stick. So with that in mind, is he a winger? He's quick, agile, and has great feet, but as a modern winger, a player's work rate has to be immaculate, constantly battling with the opponent's fullback up and down the flank, contributing to attack and defense. I'll be using his stats from his most recent full Premier League season in the 2020-21 season for this next part. And the reason I'm doing this is because, as I said, last year for United he was very stop-start, and for Sevilla he barely even played, so you can't really draw any meaningful conclusions from that. Also, shout out to FB Refs for these stats. On the left is a snapshot of Martial's defensive stats in relation to other wingers and attacking midfielders in the Premier League for that year. As you can see, it's actually just abysmal. Being in the first percentile for pressures amongst your positional peers while playing in a team that was supposedly counter-attack orientated is unreal. On the right are his stats compared to other attackers in the Premier League, predominantly strikers and second strikers. Again, it's not looking good, bruv. Another issue with him on the wing is that despite the pace he has, he always tends to want to get the ball to feet instead of making forward runs, which is understandable as his ball control is arguably his greatest trait, but it's not great enough to avoid being caught out and dispossessed more often than not. And again, With United being a counter-attacking team in recent years, this mentality just did not fit. As per the title and the sentiment of this video, work rate is the reason why many predicted years ago that Martial's game would suffer over time. Under Louis van Gaal, for example, when pressing wasn't as rigorous, this wasn't an issue, but many were concerned that he wouldn't be able to adapt to a high-pressure system, and so far, all those people were right. So then, is he a striker? We've already shown that his defensive work rate is poor. No stats for this next one, but in offense, it's pretty much the same story. He's shown in the past that he has the ability to time his runs when making off-the-ball movements, but again, the tendency to want ball to feet comes through strong. And I know I've gone on and on about his technical abilities throughout this video. However, there is a problem with that argument too. As we can see in this chart of his completed dribbles per game, that part of his game has also taken a major hit over the years. Again, not good. But all things considered, I haven't even touched on what I believe to be the main issue here. The guy clearly seems to be a confidence player. A few good performances and he's off to the races. A few bad ones and, well, couple that with a slew of managers that come in and out and simply do not believe in him, and what you get is a player who is running out of chances to fulfill his potential. For his sake, we can only hope things change soon. And there we have it. If it wasn't blaringly obvious, I'm a huge fan of the guy and I've just been frustrated over the past couple of years, but it is what it is. Maybe it'll come right, you never know. What do you guys think of Anthony Martial? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want, be sure to follow me on the Twitters and Instagrams, but no pressure. That is all for me today. Really hope you guys enjoyed, hope you're all staying safe. Cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.